Florida. For the thousands of vacationers and beachgoers who visit each year, it's a tropical getaway, a place to thaw winter's cold and enjoy the warm, clear water for people as well as sharks.
Much as the tourists head south in the winter to avoid the cold temperatures up north, many species of sharks do the same thing.
I just wanted to warn you today we have a lot of shark activity in the area.
We heard. We don't, not going in the water.
All right.
Despite the ever-vigilant watch of lifeguards and hundreds of beach closings each year, Florida has more shark attacks than anywhere else on the continent. George Burgess has been studying shark attacks for over 25 years and is director of the International Shark Attack File.
Well, sharks are found throughout Florida, of course, both in the Gulf and the Atlantic side and in the Keys. The area that has the most attacks, however, is an area from about Daytona Beach to Miami. This, of course, coincides with the area of maximum human utilization of the water as well as sharks. As a result of the fact that we have so many people in the water, as well as living in a subtropical environment that naturally houses populations of sharks in nearshore waters, it's only logical that we're going to have interactions between those two groups. And as a result of that, Florida has more shark attacks than any other area in North America.
From the air, the white sand beaches and clear green water seem inviting. But the aerial view also reveals a terrifying mix. Bathers and surfers happily enjoying the water, oblivious to the schools of hungry sharks sharing the same waves.
If you talk to any of the people on the planes that carry the suntan lotion banners up and down the beaches and the advertisements for the bars and so forth. Talk to any of those pilots and they'll tell you that they see sharks in and amongst the swimmers all the time.
Like the fish jumping to avoid the jaws of death, unsuspecting bathers are chased from the surf when the dorsal fin of one of the more aggressive sharks cuts the surface.
We were out there swimming and happened to look out and I saw this thing jump and I, like, just part of it, and I said, there's a shark. I says, get out of the water. And we come running up. He wouldn't believe me at first because he didn't see it. I said, they're out there.
Am I going back in the water? I don't know. Not for a while. maybe in the pool, not here, no.
10 to 15 people are attacked in Florida each year, with most attacks occurring along the wide stretches of beach on the east coast from Jacksonville to Miami. Although the attacks are relatively uncommon, sharing the ocean here with sharks is nearly unavoidable. But in Florida, avoiding the open ocean does not guarantee a shark-free environment. At first glance, the sheltered Tampa Bay harbor on Florida's west coast seems as safe as it is beautiful. The thought of shark attacks seems as remote here as the fireplaces and wool socks left behind by sun-seeking tourists. Even St. Petersburg local Rick LePrevost never assumed there was trouble in paradise the day he and his family went sailing on the bay. It was only when they jumped into the water for a swim that Rick knew something was terribly wrong.
All of a sudden, I mean, it was a force. I feel it was a force, the best way to describe it. Just grabbed hold of my leg and just pulled me and submerged me under the water, under the surface. And you know, that quick, I felt it. And you know, with its force and my force going with it, I went ahead and twisted, you know, tried to twist away from what was grabbing me and kicking at the same time. I felt, you know, I felt that I was free. And, you know, it was a bit, you know, of course, I was at the surface, you know, and all this happened was in seconds. And at that time, I'd realized that something had just gotten a hold of me. And it wasn't a fish that bumped me, because I could feel it, you know, the cuts, you know, when you bleed underwater, you get a cut, you feel it, the warmth that comes from your own blood, and I could feel that was happening. And my first instinct, being a parent, of course, was I've got to get the kids out of the water. They weren't all out of the water yet, and that this could happen. Is there one? Is there more? Am I going to be bit again? Let's get them out first. And to get them out first meant I was going to be last, which meant I was the one bleeding, which could mean I was going to get bit again.
Leprevis was savagely bitten just 10 minutes after entering the water by what was believed to be a lemon or bull shark. Rick and his family scrambled back to the safety of the deck after the attack and watched in horror as the shark circled the boat in a fresh pool of blood. A year later, Rick's wounds are finally healed, but the memory of his leg nearly being ripped off is fresh.
From here, actually, what it bit into was this big thigh muscle here. It bit down to here. Then the bottom teeth stuck in here, in my rear, and then here, and then down the calf, and then to the ankle.
Is Tampa Bay's combination of bathers and sharks a dangerous one? Rick Leprevis says yes. And although shark attacks are rare in the bay, Rick feels if he knew the possibility existed, he and his family might never have entered the water that day.
I was given that knowledge that this is a potentially heightened area of shark activity for mating, that it would have never been a consideration for us to swim there. The wind was dead. We probably would have maybe just put the sails down, motored back in, and we could have went to a pool, for that matter, had we known.
Picturesque St. Augustine on Florida's Gold Coast is a favorite destination for tourists looking to turn back the hands of time. When Ponce de Leon landed here in 1513, he too sought to turn back the clock when he discovered the Fountain of Youth in this very area. Today, local surfers exploring the waves off this coast are making a much more serious discovery, that they are prime targets for shark attacks.
Most of the attacks involving people on the East Coast involve surfers. And surfers are well aware that this is a risk that they take. In fact, in certain quarters, the presence of a shark scar is worn as a badge of honor and among our surfer brethren.
We get out of the water, you know, when there's a lot of them, but when we just see one or two, we just hang out and they're always out there anyway. Most of the time you can't see them. So they attack from underneath, so you never see them when they're coming anyway.
But even for the most die-hard wave rider, a shark encounter is a nerve-shattering experience at the very least.
I was just sitting there and all of a sudden, I felt the board tip a little bit. And all of a sudden I looked down in the water and there was about an 8-foot bull shark under me and he had my fin in his mouth. I said, nah, I'm getting out. I've had enough for today.
There's like 1 week out of the summer, like right at the beginning of the summer, it's like shark mating season or something. I don't know. They're everywhere. It's like you paddle and hit them. That freaks you out.
Surfers and surfboards are not a normal part of a shark's diet. So as a result, most surfers attacked by sharks are not eaten, but merely tasted and spit out.
A human, particularly a surfer sitting on a surfboard with his hands or his legs dangling in the water, splashing, does those kind of activities. It's not so unusual that a shark might make a mistake and interpret one of those legs or ankles as a normal food item. And in fact, virtually all of the cases in Florida, shark attacks we have, involve a single bite and then the shark disappears.
And although their visits may be brief, the effects of these shark attacks are long-lasting for the unfortunate victims. Surfer Claude Sinach became a hit-and-run victim as he floated on his board waiting for the next set of waves.
One came up and grabbed me and it was like kind of walking through the woods at night and stepping into a bear trap or something. But I just felt like a tremendous amount of pressure, and then thank God he didn't like what he tasted and he just kind of spit me out. He definitely put some good holes in me too. It went about 5 inches into the bone where he ripped the tendons up. It kind of just looked like I put my foot in a meat mincer or something. It's pretty mangled.
Despite his attack, Claude continues to surf without fear, but says overall his fellow wave riders in Florida have a different attitude about sharks.
Pretty much scared of them. I know out in Hawaii and stuff they treat them as the armakua, it's like a god almost, but here it's a different thing. They're really scared of them, I can tell. I don't fear them anymore.
Next on Danger Beach, we travel to the 50th state, where the sharks who are worshipped have suddenly become deadly for the first time in 33 years. The sky was dark and the seas were rough. The evening, surfer Brian O'Donnell went into the water at Leftovers Beach on the north shore of Oahu.
He surfs there quite frequently, so he knows the water is there. That was his favorite spot to surf or body surf. Evidently, the two surfers that he saw came into shore to have a cigarette break, and when they went back out there, they didn't see my brother. So they searched the beach, and there was no sign of Brian. So they called the police and the search and rescue, the fire department. And the fire department, the search and rescue, searched for him all night till morning, and there was no sign of my brother. The lifeguard found his boogie board with a chunk missing out of the boogie board. The lifeguard said that it was possibly a shark that had took a chunk out of it.
I came down to Waimea Bay and we had a boogie board, a normal foam boogie board with a large section measuring 16 inches across missing. I took that board to the scene where it was identified as belonging to the victim who was missing. From that moment on, the search, we were seriously concerned about it being a shark attack.
So I went down that evening and took a look at the board, and it's a classic tiger shark bite. Tiger sharks have a very characteristic tooth with a cusp and a serrated edge on it, and you could actually look at the board, and the plastic has a hard plastic bottom, and the actual serrations of it matches right up perfectly with a tiger shark tooth.
For days after his disappearance, family members kept a beachside vigil, hoping for a miracle or at least a clue to help determine Brian's fate. But Brian's body was never found, and after an exhaustive search, the only clue ever recovered was evidence enough for the grief-stricken family.
We feel that there was a shark involved, and since Brian was a good swimmer, he must have gotten bitten by the shark, and this is what we feel had happened that day.
Brian O'Donnell's death came just 3 months after a tiger shark attack on the neighboring island of Maui left a woman dead, the first fatal attack there in 3 decades. 41-year-old Marty Morell was snorkeling with a friend just a few hundred yards from her oceanfront home in Olowalu when a huge tiger shark struck. The friend scrambled to shore in a futile attempt to get help. But before she could reach the beach, the attack and Marty Morell's life were over. The tiger shark seen here devouring a sperm whale carcass is a voracious and indiscriminate feeder who has been implicated in more attacks on humans than any other shark, including the great white of Jaws fame. Tigers are plentiful in Hawaiian seas and are also known to be territorial, staking out inshore waters, scavenging and feeding virtually unchallenged.
We should perhaps fish for larger sharks in areas where there are many people bathing or surfing. For example, there's one shark, big tiger shark, that seems to have been seen so repeatedly off Miley that they call it the Miley tiger, and several surfers, including one friend of mine, have been badly frightened by this shark coming nearby. I think it's time maybe to catch the Miley tiger.
In an effort to quickly eradicate the infamous Olowalu tiger, local officials took a page from Jaws and hired a shark hunter, a move that angered many native Hawaiians who see the sharks as aumakua, or reincarnated spirits of ancestors that act as protectors in the ancient Hawaiian culture. Despite the controversy, a large tiger was caught
I could not say whether that was or was not the tiger shark. We have some theories that tiger sharks are very territorial. But if they are territorial, then this shark that we caught was probably highly likely to be probably one, if not the shark that attacked the Marty Morell.
Just how many shark attacks occur in Hawaiian waters is a question frequently debated. In many instances, drowning victims' bodies or clothes are discovered with numerous shark bites. Despite that, the cause of death is routinely listed as drowning, with the bites coming post-mortem. Officially, the death of Marty Morell off Maui was the first shark fatality in 33 years, but unofficially, a University of Hawaii biological researcher claims there have been 31 attacks since 1980, resulting in 12 deaths. Statistics like these are enough to panic hotel and resort operators, threatening Hawaii's multi-billion-dollar tourist industry. Most shark experts agree that these increases in shark attacks are a result of more people entering the water today than ever before. But entering the realm of the shark does not always have to end in disaster. At Sea Life Park on Oahu's North Shore, the public's fascination with sharks begins at an early age, and the state of Hawaii has capitalized on that interest to promote shark education. To avoid attacks, it is recommended to stay out of the water at dawn or dusk when many sharks feed. A person should never swim alone or when bleeding. Murky water, harbor mouths, and dead animals in the water should be avoided, and fish behaving erratically could be a sign that a shark is near. Reducing shark attacks is possible, but all bathers must be forewarned. The ocean is the domain of the shark, and no one is completely safe from the threat of attack. One thing remains as clear as the blue Hawaiian waters. Bigger sharks, like this 9-foot tiger caught at the mouth of Honolulu Harbor, are moving closer to shore in search of food. The sports fishermen who are catching the deadly predators with more frequency and closer to beaches attribute this alarming trend to overfishing of the big shark's normal prey.
We're starting to get more and more shark attacks. Since we've had these longliners in, it seems to be taking the food away that they normally eat. And now the sharks are moving in to get other food, and as they are, they're finding people. And we've had 2 bad shark attacks within the last couple of months. And one woman was killed, the other man, his board was badly bitten, and he's disappeared. They've never found him. And we've had another one that just got chewed, but luckily she escaped. So the sharks are definitely looking for other food, being their main food is being wiped out.
The Amakua, or shark gods, offered protection to generations of ancient Hawaiians. Protection that today may be needed by the islanders more than ever before. Next, on Danger Beach, meet a man who makes his living hunting the White Death down under. Vic Hislop gets very angry when humans are attacked by sharks on Australian beaches. So angry, in fact, he rarely fails to see that the sharks in question get the point. Vic's quest to avenge human death or injury at the jaws of sharks has been a lifelong obsession that has earned him the self-proclaimed title of world's leading authority on the dangerous species of sharks. For 25 years, the sea has been Vic's classroom. The great white, tiger, and hammerhead sharks, his inspiration. Perched high above the Captain Cook Highway in North Queensland is another sign of Vic's inspiration, the Vic Hislop Shark Show. Visitors flock to this one-of-a-kind museum of shark paraphernalia to be greeted by walls of tabloid-type headlines, which Vic himself often makes after catching a rampaging shark.
This is a very interesting story, this one. Young Christopher here lives at the canals in Queensland on our Gold Coast, and he was swimming across to his friend on the other side when he was attacked by a shark. Now, these are man-made canals, and many, many kilometres from the ocean. Young Christopher asked for me to go down and try and catch the shark when he was attacked right in front of his house, because he was frightened for all his schoolmates. It was right before the Christmas holidays. So I went down there, and after 6 days, I caught this black whaler right in front of Christopher's house.
Much of Vic's knowledge of man-eating sharks was acquired by slicing open a dead shark's stomach and examining the contents. A practice that has produced dolphins, turtles, pelicans, and even penguins. As Vic has discovered, a shark's appetite knows no bounds, and an entire room at the museum is testimony to that gruesome fact. These great whites were actually shark attack victims themselves, having been eaten after being caught and tied to the side of Vic's boat. Cannibalism, however, is not what these sharks are notorious for, as Vic's investigations inside sharks' bowels sometimes reveal.
In my 30 years of shark fishing, out of about a dozen times that I've found human bones, human remains in sharks. Now what we have here, this is a 12-foot tiger shark. This is somebody's left arm. You can see the fingers here. We go down the forearm to the elbow and back up to the shoulder. Here we have the spinal column, some rib bones. Just above that, we have the hip and the socket where the leg bone joins, and here we have just below that the leg bone, and beside that half of the human skull, been bitten in halves. This body was never identified, nor were any of the others that I have ever found and handed the bones over. So I think that's quite remarkable.
The crown jewel of Vic Hislop's shark collection is stored in a huge freezer at a temperature of 20 degrees below zero. This 2.5-ton great white shark, brought in by Vic himself off South Australia, is the largest of its kind ever caught, according to Vic, and may have been responsible for numerous human fatalities.
About 20 years ago, our Prime Minister, Harold Holt, disappeared while swimming off a beach in Victoria. Now, for years after that, I watched that area and noticed a lot more people disappeared in and around the same area. So it was a great ambition to get down there and fish, just to see what was getting around that area. Now, I knew there was a seal colony nearby, so I concentrated on the seal colony. I fished there for 2 days and caught this great white here, which proved to be the largest great white ever caught in the world. Now, the incredible part of this story, after I caught this shark, I had a proper survey done in the area. Now, after our Prime Minister, Harold Holt, disappeared, for the next 17 years, a staggering 119 people disappeared in the same area. There was one time, there was 5 lifesavers in the water. There was the captain and his mate were talking. They were just a metre apart. Now, the captain survived. He said, a shark's nose appeared between us. He said it hardly made a ripple. It just appeared gently, and it took my mate by the head and body. He said, I knew I couldn't help my mate because I heard all the bones in his body break as the shark shut its mouth right in front of me. He said there was no scream, there was very little splash. He said it was as if my mate never existed. The shark just sunk back underneath the water with him. Now what this points to, with my lifetime of study and the work that I've put into it, is that all shark attacks that we know about are from quite small sharks. They're from sharks that grab people and the person screams and yells and splashes. Somebody else rushes out to help that person to the beach. Sometimes they die on the beach, sometimes they survive. But sharks like this one can take a person so quickly and so easily that you could actually be swimming with your mate, turn around and look at a good sword on the beach for a second, and turn back and he could be gone. Now, what you'd do then would be to go and get the police. The police would walk down on the beach, have a look and say, well, your mate must have had a heart attack, he must have had a cramp and been washed away in the current. There are far too many people disappearing without any trace, and they're being put down to considered drowned. I even know cases where they found just a leg on the beach, and all the news has ever known is that the man's body was found. There's that big a cover-up. It's an incredible cover-up on shark attacks.
On land, man is the hunter. But in the sea, he is, and probably always will be, the hunted. As populations boom and more people take to the oceans for sport, naturally more shark attacks occur. But according to Vic, the hand of man may also be playing a more subtle role in the increase of shark attacks.
The main problem is the heavy fishing that's happening all over the ocean now. Really, the average person can't even begin to imagine the fishing that I speak of. There's over 30,000 kilometres of drift net set per day. There's over 30,000 kilometres of long line set per day throughout the world. Now, this is all food for the great white shark and the big tiger sharks. Now, you cannot thin out the food source of the end of the chain predator, which is these huge sharks, and not thin out the big sharks. It's going to get to a position, it has to, where there'll be nothing left around our shores except large man-eating sharks if something isn't done about it. In the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see it happening all over the world. There are going to be a lot of shark attacks on humans. It's something that is going to increase out of proportion. And I really don't know the answer for it. I just know the facts and the studies that I've done.
Sunrise. South Africa's Natal coast. No beaches in the world are more beautiful or more deadly. This fabled coastline bordering the Indian Ocean has been the site of hundreds of shark attacks through the years, with most incidents occurring in the highly populated Durban area. The culprits in these attacks have been primarily bull and tiger sharks, scavengers known to frequent the shallows, and the ominous great white shark, who prefers the deeper, cooler waters further south near Cape Town. There the white often pursues his favorite prey, the seals. Thanks to a subtropical environment, South African beaches are crowded with bathers year-round, including a Natal coast resort considered by many to be the most dangerous in the world, Amanzimtoti. It was here in 1974 that a young lifeguard became another victim of this deadly stretch of coast.
I was in very shallow water. I was about to put my foot down and step out of the water. I was grabbed from behind on the back of my calf. And the shark grabbed me and shook furiously, and then he and I parted company, and I was basically left in the shallows.
As a result of the attack, Damon, now an avid horse jumper, has had to make some very special adjustments to his lifestyle.
Sit down. You can maybe sit down there.
Good boy. There was no pain. It was just like a big force, like one imagines an iron filing being attracted to a magnet. But it took from just below the knee to the ankle, took the whole of the calf, and virtually the whole of the fibula was gone. But it left the shin and my foot, which was then amputated. I haven't been riding very long, but I've been fairly successful up to now. I had been doing springboard diving, and I continued. It put me back in terms of ability for quite a while, but I soon surpassed that, and later on went to get provincial colours for diving, which is equivalent to state colours. I dived in 9 national competitions, 9 years in a row. And 1 year I was reserve springbok.
nothing that you do can bring it back. So there's no point in harping back to what might have been or anything like that. The only thing that you can do is continue with your life as best you can. There was a chap who was attacked just over a month before me. And in fact, a month after he was attacked, I was on duty. And the bathing ban had been lifted. And a neighbor of mine came and said, "Is it safe to swim here?" This was on the Sunday. And I said, "Yes, of course it's safe to swim here." And so she said, "But someone was attacked by a shark last week." So I said, "No, that was a freak occurrence. You have more chance of being struck by lightning. You won't be attacked by a shark here." And 3 days later, I was attacked by a shark there.
The conflict between shark and man in South Africa already had become a major problem during the Victorian era, when bathing in the sea became fashionable. Carloads of early sunseekers flocked to the Natal coast for their vacations. In 1906, 3 men died in attacks off the Durban beaches. By 1907, the Durban anti-shark barrier was built. This barrier was the first ever attempt at keeping shark and bather from meeting. For 20 years, while it survived the battering of the sea, there were no more attacks. By 1928, the barrier was beyond repair, and once again, the Durban beaches were unprotected. Bathing in Durban waters, however, remained safe until the 40s, when the sharks returned, attacking 21 bathers and killing 7 from 1943 to 1951. One victim, a former lifeguard, had the double misfortune of being attacked twice, but the luck to survive when many others did not.
Well, I've been attacked twice. The first time was in 1944, and I was swimming with these 2 friends. I was actually slightly ahead of them. They were either side of me. And in the channel, which was about 40, 50 meters offshore, this thing just suddenly hit my leg. And I felt this bump, and I put my hand down, and there was a big hole in my leg. And I knew, or assumed, that I'd been bitten by a shark, screamed and shouted.
Despite losing 9 pounds of flesh from his thigh and nearly bleeding to death, Gabe returned to the water soon after.
Well, the second time I was attacked was 3 years later, in 1947. While I was watching to see where this wave was going to break, like I could catch it, I felt this chewing sensation on my foot. And I kicked loose and kicked again, and it was still sort of chewing on my foot, and I kicked very much harder. I can't remember actually touching the shark. But I just know that I screamed and shouted and sort of threshed, trying to push it away. And then the next thing I knew, I was on this wave. With that wave, I rode it right onto the beach. I got into the shallow water, this deep.
Safely on shore, Gabe again recovered. A surprising circumstance in an era where shark attacks were almost always lethal.
And I was the first one in that period of a whole spate of shark attacks that had lived. So I counted myself lucky, and the second time I thought, well, this is it. But I don't know, I didn't really think. I was just too scared to think. I just sort of went mad.
Further south of Durban, the carnage of the 50s continued as the dilapidated shark barriers installed decades before began to fail. From December 1957 to April 1958, South Coast shark attacks broke all records worldwide. In December alone, 5 people were killed by sharks and 2 more were maimed for life. One victim was bitten in half while watching a barrier being repaired. Almost from the first day of the December holidays, attacks began. Bathing was banned. Ski boats and air patrols were used to spot and even bomb sharks. Hysteria was at a peak. Finally, under pressure from a beleaguered tourist industry, shark nets were installed off beaches along much of the South African coast. Unlike the barriers of old, nets were designed to entangle and drown the sharks, thereby reducing their numbers and the potential for attack. The nets continue in use today and have been very successful in reducing attacks. But due to high cost and remote locations, many beaches along the South African coast remain unnetted.
And I believe way north at Richards Bay is a much bigger swell, peaking 6 foot. And of course, the problem there is to double check with your local authorities whether the shark nets are in place.
Despite newspaper and radio warnings, many bold surfers venture off to the unnetted, unprotected beaches, risking life and limb. These shocking photographs are graphic testimony to the damage a shark is capable of inflicting on human flesh. The victim, a young girl who surfed in an unprotected area, survived. Doctors, however, were unable to save her leg.
The problem with surfers is that they surf in particular spots along the Natal coast which are not protected by nets because it is such a good wave. And they're prepared to take the chance of being attacked by a shark to enjoy a good wave. My personal point of view is that it's a silly outlook on life because you're endangering yourself. You're endangering other guys by taking them along there. And my view is I might have funny little legs, but I like them as they are.
Next on Danger Beach, relive the terror of 3 Californians who narrowly escaped the jaws of death. The great white shark, the most ferocious predator on Earth, a cannibal, a man-eater, a 2-ton grim reaper with no mercy, no remorse. You are about to meet 3 men who came within inches of death at the jaws of the great white. 3 surfers at 3 of California's most dangerous beaches, whose 3 separate nightmares are surprisingly similar. 43-year-old Craig Rogers has first-hand experience with both. His heart-pounding escape from a shark in 1987 changed his life and made him a celebrity in this Central California surf mecca. His board, nearly bitten in 2 by the estimated 18-foot great white, is on display at the local surfing museum, providing a sobering look at the awesome power of the shark.
It was a very gray sky, slight offshore breeze. The water was a cold gray. Surf was about 4 foot. And the place where I was surfing was a beach break, and the waves were coming in, breaking on the sandbars. And I had just paddled out through the channel and gotten out past the breakers and had just sat up to a sitting came up to a sitting position, waiting for the next set of waves to come when all this occurred. While I was sitting there waiting, I noticed that my board stopped bobbing with the surface of the ocean and became quite still. Not anything drastic, just something real slight. I decided to glance down. Well, that glance filled my entire eyeballs with this head of a great white shark. 889-5030.
For Southern California businessman Kurt Vikan, memories of his attack in 1980 are still vivid years later. As a college student, Vikan regularly surfed the frigid waters off the rocky northern California coast. On a day like any other, Vikan paddled out for a typical day of surfing before class, not realizing he would be nearly pulled out to sea by a giant white shark.
I was out surfing with 2 friends at Moonstone Beach. It was a cold, crisp fall morning, and had spent about 20 minutes in the water, and things were kind of slow, so I was paddling down the beach away from my friends. And I'd been paddling for quite some time, about several minutes. I was about 50 yards away when, at this beach break, I ran into something. And one thing I won't forget is my surfboard stopping very suddenly and then actually sucking down as it was flat. And it really took a lot of force to actually submerge the surfboard on just lying there flat across the water. It just made a real kind of a strange sucking noise with water going around it, and at that point I rolled off the front of my surfboard. At that point I was watching a very large white shark swimming away with my surfboard.
Rodney Swan was attacked by what was believed to be a 17-foot great white off a rocky point north of Eureka in 1991. Of the 3 men, Swan was the only one injured, sustaining puncture wounds to his thigh. Wounds that could have been much worse considering the great white's size and power. Though not seriously injured, Swan continues to deal with the reality of having been within inches of death.
We pulled up here at about 5 o'clock, 4:30 in the afternoon. It was really foggy. It wasn't like this at all. You couldn't see the Flatiron Rock out there. And really small waves. Just kind of thinking, not about anything in particular, and next thing I know is just this wham right under my board with a force that I'll surely remember for the rest of my life. It felt like I had hit a rock. That's what my first inclination was, that, oh, I just dry reefed and hit a rock. And my heart was racing, and I finally realized where I was, and there's no rocks out there. Even though it looks like a rocky point, there's no rocks out there. It just dropped straight into the beach. And I said, wow, that wasn't a rock. What was that? Maybe a sea lion? Or was it a seal? Or was it a salmon? And all these ideas are racing through my head. I opened my eyes, and what I saw was the belly of a rather large white shark. Really large. Looked really big. And I felt like I was definitely up to my match on this one.
Face to face with giant great white sharks. All 3 men spent the next few agonizing seconds in complete terror, wondering if the shark that had made brief contact would stay and finish the hunt.
And I guess I was instantly overcome by such a fear that I couldn't even think of words when I was screaming. I was just, all of a sudden, I resorted back to being very primal. And the very worst part of screaming is when you run out of breath and you're reaching in for air that you're not sure if you'll have time to get, because it seemed to me like my head was on the chopping block and I had but a few milliseconds to live.
I felt that it was the end. I mean, that it was all over. And I gotta give Peter Benchley credit to his first or his movie Jaws 1. It was very similar to that kind of an experience. It was he did a very good job at creating what it was like being in the water with a white shark.
The shark slowly let go of me and backed up really slowly, really mechanically, like dumb. It looked really slow and sluggish, as though, I mean, I had always seen it in movies expecting it just to come and rear and whip around and thrash about, and it didn't do that. It was just really at ease, and we both kind of seemed like we made eye contact or something, and almost I was saying, well, please don't do what you can do to me.
I never ever had any thoughts of surviving this, although I was hoping to maybe gasp another second of life. Then a voice from within, and to me I think it may have been my guardian angel or the Lord speaking to me. But that voice very clearly, not saying an audible voice, but a voice from within that's telling me something to do, said, trust me. Immediately turn around for shore, aim for shore, and paddle now.
I was just looking around, dumbfounded, and my board was about leash length away, upside down, and I could see it, and I could see the indentions on it, and I just started saying, oh my God, this is real, I'm being attacked by a shark, what do I do? The first thing I thought of was to just sit there and try not to move at all. I was really calm. I didn't make a sound, I didn't make a move. After about 5 or 7 seconds, I slowly pulled the board in with my leash, and I got on it, and I still stayed there for a little while longer, because I didn't want to put up a fight. To me, it was no contest. I kind of wanted to act dead, I guess you could say. But that was about the end of my encounter with him as far as the physical aspect goes. He or she seemed to have just kind of gone off to the horizon.
Typical of white shark attacks on surfers off California, the animals took a single gentle bite of these surfers or their boards, and in every case quickly released when they realized they had not bitten suitable prey. Shark experts believe these were cases of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Investigating or mouthing prey is a common practice among great whites. Normally when hunting, great whites strike hard and fast, then leaving the seal or sea lion to bleed to death before returning to feed. For Rodney, Craig, and Kurt, the great white ordeal was still not over, even though the shark did not immediately return. Clinging to the board that offered them a thin sanctuary from the water and a huge circling shark they could not see, none of the men would begin to regain their composure until they reached the sanctity of the beach.
Just very, very hardcore survival instincts taking over at that point, and really feeling like that I don't have a real good chance of getting back to the beach, and I did, so I was pretty happy about that.
I got to where the fins were scraping on the beach, and that's where you hop off. And even then I wasn't satisfied. I grabbed my board and ran up the beach, still not satisfied till I got to the dry fluff.
I just slowly started paddling in, about half my hand in the water, because it's not a very far paddle. And because I didn't want to disturb the water too much. But then when I got about 10 feet off from the beach, and saw my friend with his hands on top of his head, then I really started scratching, and I got out of the water as fast as I could.
Despite their encounters, all three men continued to surf the same waters where they were attacked, as if strangely drawn back, looking for answers. Was it luck? Was it their will to survive? Or was it a higher power that saved these men? Perhaps the answer lies with the sharks themselves. Only they know why they confronted these surfers with the jaws of death. Then gently, mysteriously, let them live on to ride the waves at Danger Beach.